this is not the first of its kind. There are universities such as Stanford, Harvard Business School, there are a bunch of schools that have started to develop barometers for the state of AI in their respective economies. Our objective here was, I'm not terribly inaccurate when I say data is scarce in India, and accurate data is even rarer. So for us, the idea was, how can we create this barometer? How can we create this index that will help us track and monitor AI investments in the country? And what we've done here is essentially created an index. This is just a seed effort. We plan to supplement this with more measures and estimates. But the idea was to create an index that will help us track, collate, and visualize data relating to artificial intelligence. On the site, you will find, there are, let me just go to the home page. The reports that I just talked about are here. This SML helped us create other indices as well, which was the remote work index and the need for human proximity. You will be able to access the research. This is the research team that's worked very diligently on this. I have two other assistant professors at ISB, Professors Nikhil Madan and Professor Shekhar Tomar, who are part of this, as well as research associate Abhishek, who's now a PhD student who's gone off to London. And this is where we could download the report. All of the areas of study that I talked about are here. And over here is also the AI index. Here, what we've attempted, at least as a start, is to measure AI activity in R&D, in education, in employment, and public perception. These are all big data backed. We've essentially scraped, collated data from various sites in the public domain to provide these indices. For instance, we have patents. We've looked at academic research, which is Elsevier's Scopus database. We've looked at also GitHub projects. The idea is we've looked at prior research to identify what defines AI and use those keywords to essentially identify different types of patents, research, and GitHub projects. Like I said, there are other areas as well, which is education. There's employment, which might be of interest as well. Some of these findings are actually interesting. I don't have the time to go into it in great detail, but I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about what we did. So the Burning Glass Technologies has several skill clusters in job postings that it's identified, and there are certain skill clusters that it identifies as AI clusters. There are a bunch of keywords there that define those skills. This could be things like NLP, computer vision, a bunch of skills that it uses to define AI skills. We looked at Naukri's job postings, and we essentially tried to identify the presence of these skills in the job postings, and that led us to identify the demand for AI jobs, the skills in India, how these vary by different metros. Bangalore, no surprise, has almost 40% of those job vacancies. The South has most of it. So those were some of the things that we have in employment. And we also have public perception, where we've looked at sentiment in terms of Google Trends, but there's also things that we're doing with Twitter data and also GitHub data, and contributing to this in that manner. Patents, again, is right now, we've only got the quantum of patents. We hope to complement this with data on citations to have a more weighted index. Similarly, for publications, we also want to look at women in AI research. There's a bunch of things that we want to explore in this space, but this is just a start in that direction. I urge you to explore the website, let us know your feedback. You can also download all of the reports that I talked about. Well, there's one report, but all of the component reports as well that you can download from this website. So with that, I'm happy to take more questions.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you for your insights. We have an audience question coming in. How do you envisage this index being used by policymakers and think tanks in driving industry sector-specific policies?
So it's a good question, I think, and I'll also bring forth my work, our work here at the center as well with governments into this. So for instance, we've just signed an MOU with a large state government, which wants a skilling policy for industrial development and growth, recovery, development and growth post the pandemic. What are the skills that these people should invest in? How do you, for instance, create a standard framework for assessment and certification of these skills? So these are some of the questions that they grapple with. And our objective with things like skills, with things like, at least with AI, is to what you see here is an aggregate picture, but then that aggregate picture of AI can be broken down into several component skills. Like there's something like 58 skills that we can break this down into and say that here are the skills that are growing. Here are the skills that are in demand in this region. Here is what industry wants in this region. If you look at vacancies and job vacancies, these are the skills that seem to be, improving over time or increasing over time in terms of demand. So all of these are elements of important inputs to policy in skilling. Also in terms of innovation, what we have here is, for instance, an index on innovation in AI in India, research in India, employment in India. We can also benchmark this to worldwide benchmarks and see what the gap is. So, and if you combine these different parameters, you get an even better picture of the economy. You can find that innovation, we're lagging, skills, we're improving, and there's a mismatch here. So, should we, for instance, have an innovation policy that fuels innovation in this space? Should we have public R&D move from 0.9% of GDP to something like 1% or 2% so that it can fuel innovation in this area? General purpose technologies are not I do well with complementary funding from public sector, from the government. If you have purely industry fueled R&D, there are other problems in terms of scale of innovation. So all of those are important elements of policy that we seek to inform. And of course, this is also about regional heterogeneity. So, you have a quick view on which Bangalore currently accounts for 40% of jobs. So that tells you the regional disparity in these skills and the demand for the skills. So it would be useful also for various state governments to have insights into this regional heterogeneity and how they can address it if they think it's necessary.